Tina Turner's life did not begin with applause, bright lights, or standing ovations. It began in silence, struggle, and a loneliness so deep that even as a child she learned how to survive by being strong before she ever learned how to be happy. Born as Anna Mae Bullock in a small town in Tennessee where dreams were rare and hope was fragile, she grew up picking cotton, watching her parents' marriage fall apart, and learning early that life does not offer comfort freely. It demands endurance first, and when her parents separated and left her behind, that abandonment carved a wound that would later turn into the fire that pushed her forward. Because some people break under pain, but others unknowingly prepare for greatness through it, and Tina was one of those souls whose suffering became the foundation of an unshakable spirit. Long before she ever sang a single note on stage, she already knew how to survive storms that would crush most people, and that survival instinct would become her greatest weapon in a world that would later try to control, silence, and destroy. Her dot music entered her life not as a luxury but as an escape, a place where her voice could say what her heart had never been allowed to express. And when she stepped into a nightclub one night and took the microphone almost by accident, nobody could have imagined that this woman with a raw, powerful voice would one day redefine rock and soul music forever. But destiny often hides in moments that seem ordinary, and that night changed everything because her voice did not just sing, it demanded attention. It carried pain, hunger, and truth. And that voice soon reached Ike Turner, a man who would become both her gateway to fame and the source of her deepest suffering. And while the world saw glamour, success, and rising stardom, behind closed doors, Tina was entering one of the darkest chapters of her life. One where love was replaced with fear, control, and violence, and yet she stayed, not because she was weak, but because she believed survival meant endurance, something she had been trained for since childhood. As the Ike and Tina Turner Review rose to fame, selling out venues and dominating charts, Tina's body bore the bruises of abuse while her voice carried joy for millions. A cruel contradiction that proves how often the strongest performers hide the deepest pain, and night after night she stood on stage smiling while living in constant terror. Trapped in a marriage that controlled her money, her career, and even her name, yet even in captivity her talent could not be dimmed. Her energy electrified crowds, her presence was undeniable, and something inside her refused to die, because legends are not born in comfort, they are forged in fire. And every performance she survived was silently preparing her for the moment she would finally choose herself over fear. The breaking point did not come softly. It arrived with exhaustion, injuries, and the realization that fame without freedom was another form of prison. And when Tina finally walked away with nothing but her name, a few cents, and a burning will to live, the world expected her to disappear. Because society rarely believes in women who start over past their prime, especially women who have been broken publicly. But what the world did not understand was that Tina Turner had already survived far worse than failure. She had survived. Losing herself and rebuilding from zero felt lighter than living in chains, so she began again, older, broke, and underestimated. Yet carrying something no one could take from her, an unbreakable soul and a voice that still had stories to tell. Rejection followed her everywhere. Record labels dismissed her as outdated, promoters doubted her relevance, and critics assumed her best years were behind her. But resilience does not ask for permission, and Tina kept performing, kept believing, kept showing up, even when doors slammed shut, because greatness does not need instant validation. It needs persistence, and slowly, quietly, she rebuilt herself, step by step, stage by stage, refusing to let her past define her ending. And then came the moment that changed everything again, when her comeback album exploded across the world. Not as a comeback story, but as a statement of power, proving that reinvention has no age limit and that survival can transform into dominance when paired with courage. Tina Turner did not just return, she conquered, becoming one of the biggest solo artists in the world, breaking records, selling millions, and commanding stages with a confidence earned through survival. Her music carried authority, her presence radiated freedom, and her story became proof that strength does not mean never falling. It means standing up every time life tries to erase you. And as the world finally celebrated her, Tina did something Even more powerful, she found peace, chose love on her own terms, and walked away from fame when she was ready, not when the industry decided, reclaiming her life fully for the first time. Her legacy is not only in her songs or awards, but in the millions of people who saw themselves in her struggle, in survivors who found courage through her journey, in women who realized it is never too late to leave, to start over, to become more, because Tina Turner's life is not just a success story, it is a survival anthem, a reminder that even when life tries to break you repeatedly, you can rise stronger, louder, and freer than ever before. And that true power is not fame, money, or applause, but the courage to choose yourself even when the world doubts you. Asterisk. Tina Turner's rebirth did not arrive with comfort or certainty. It arrived with fear disguised as hope. Because starting over in a world that had already judged you is one of the hardest acts of courage a human being can perform. And when Tina stepped into this new chapter of her life, she was carrying trauma that did not vanish just because the abuse had ended. Nightmares followed her, self-doubt whispered relentlessly, and the scars left by years of control did not heal overnight, yet she refused to let pain define her future, choosing instead to confront it head-on, learning that survival is not just escaping a harmful situation, but rebuilding your identity afterward, piece by piece, breath by breath, until the woman staring back at you in the mirror finally belongs to you again. And this inner reconstruction was as demanding as any performance she had ever given on stage. During this period, spirituality not as an escape, but as an anchor, turning toward Buddhism and daily chanting as a way to regain control over her mind, her fear, and her destiny, because when everything external has been taken from you, the only power left is the one you cultivate within. And for Tina, this practice became a source of strength that steadied her when rejection felt unbearable, when loneliness pressed in, and when the industry's silence made her wonder if her voice would ever matter again. But each day she showed up for herself, refusing to surrender to bitterness, understanding that anger might fuel survival, but peace is what sustains longevity, and that inner discipline would later reflect in the clarity, confidence, and authority she carried as an artist reborn. Her climb back was not glamorous. It was humbling, performing in smaller venues, accepting modest pay, enduring skepticism from those who once applauded her. Yet these moments forged a deeper connection with her craft. Because when fame strips away, you discover whether your love for what you do is real, and Tina's love for music was unshakable. She sang not for validation, but because her voice was her truth, and slowly something shifted, audiences responded. Not to nostalgia, but to authenticity, to the raw power of a woman who had lived through darkness and emerged with something meaningful to say. And that sincerity resonated louder than any trend when her album finally broke through. It did not feel like luck, it felt earned, because every note carried years of struggle, every lyric carried survival, and the world did not just hear music. It felt resilience, and Tina Turner, once written off, became a symbol of possibility, redefining what success looks like after failure, after trauma, after starting over, proving that age is not a barrier but a badge of experience. And suddenly the same industry that doubted her scrambled to celebrate her. Yet this time Tina stood grounded, unafraid, and unbothered, because she had already learned the most important lesson of all: external approval is temporary, but self-respect is permanent. Her stage presence during this era was electric, not because she was trying to impress, but because she was free, and freedom has a power that cannot be replicated. She moved with confidence, sang with authority, and commanded attention without asking for it, embodying the kind of strength that comes from having nothing left to prove. And audiences across the world felt that energy because they were not watching a performer chasing relevance. They were witnessing a woman fully aligned with who she was, and that authenticity became her greatest magnet, drawing admiration, respect, and loyalty from generations who saw in her a reflection of their own battles. Despite the success, Tina never romanticized her past pain. She spoke about it honestly, refusing to glamorize suffering while also refusing to let it silence her. Understanding that truth has the power to liberate, not just the speaker, but the listener as well. And by sharing her story, she gave voice to countless survivors who had been taught to endure quietly, reminding them that leaving is not failure, that rebuilding is not weakness, and that your past does not get to decide how brightly you shine in the future. And this honesty elevated her beyond celebrity, transforming her into a beacon of resilience whose influence extended far beyond music.